everybody. It is the Monday after Thanksgiving. I'm Ryan Harper here with my beautiful, lovely, intelligent, amazing, I feel like a women's empowerment movement.
I know.
Kristin here, and we're going to be talking about notes and why notes are awesome and how to determine what those notes are and what makes good characteristics of said notes.
I would just like to say this is like the first day in a week I've had a shower. Is that too much information?
I'm so glad that I gave such an eloquent introduction to womanness of you, and you led with you just
I had dreadlocks yesterday.
Oh.
Dreads.
I don't know if that's a good thing.
On my hair, it's not. It doesn't look good.
No, or at the same time, you do you. You do you. Ugh.
All right. So jumping right into it.
Man, I should have went with me too.
Me too.
Ugh. Oh, gross. Yeah. So good characteristics of a note and what makes a note a good.
What makes a note good?
Is that what this is about?
Yeah. Well, that's one of the number one things I get questions on. People are like, "Hey, what are you looking for on the notes you buy?" And I'm like, "I want a good note." And people are like, "Well, what does that mean? What's a good note?" And so the first thing I like to look at is know your asset, right? So depending on what you're investing in, you could have a mortgage note on anything. Is it a commercial multifamily building, right? Mm-hmm. Is it a retail lot? Is it a single family home? Is it vacant land? So that's the first thing I like to look at. For me personally, having just a single family home on a lot, sticks and bricks, foundation, the roof, the whole thing, not a mobile home.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what I look for. So in a really good note.
So the first thing you do is, that's interesting because like when I'm thinking about paper, the first thing you would look at is numbers, and you're saying, okay, yeah, but the numbers may be great on paper, but the physical asset may be complete garbage. Right.
You might have to take that back. So if you take that back, is that something that you have experience in?
Mm-hmm.
And, why do I like single family homes? Why do I like mortgages on single family homes? Because they are so liquid. They are so easy to trade back and forth. Whereas if you're talking about, a multifamily building, right? If you're talking about an apartment complex, those are not super easy to, get performing again, get that asset performing again.
Right.
So, and that's the whole difference. If you've got a strip mall, there are fewer investors that would know what to do with a strip mall to get that performing again and get it resold than it would be for, like, say, somebody who has fixed up a house. There are tons of investors who do that.
So, what's interesting is the takeaway there could be a lot of the same way as like if you're doing a flip or a wholesale is the first question is, at the very end of the day, do I want to own this asset?
Right.
Because if the shit hits the fan or worst case scenario, I may have to own this property.
Right.
And
what am I going to do with it if I have to actually physically own that house?
Right.
Or that strip mall or that vacant land or whatever. Do you have the wherewithal to deal with that?
Ugh.
So that's the first thing I look at.
Right.
And if it's a single family home, especially when I'm buying performing mortgages, which is kind of what this is geared toward, I know that I can unload a single family house mortgage that's on a foundation, not a mobile home. I know I can unload that in 5 minutes.
Especially, and again, we're talking about location.
Yeah.
Because you can have, my buddy Tyler and I, we have this conversation all the time because his family's from Alabama, and there's literally mansions out there that you could buy for like $2 million. Like mega, well actually like not 2 million, like 800,000, mega mansion properties.
Like 20,000 square feet, and they've got ranches and rolling
something
hills.
That here would be probably a $30 million property.
Right.
But at the end of the day, it's like, okay, it may only cost $800,000, but you're living in the middle of nowhere, and maybe your neighbors are crackheads or meth dealers or whatever.
Or maybe you don't have neighbors. Or the thing is, when you only have 10 people living in an area, okay, well, that also limits you needing to sell that house.
Yeah.
Because you got maybe 10 people who want to live in that area.
Yeah.
So that to me is a big thing. And so, yeah, I mean, when I'm looking at, there have been notes that I've had to pass on simply because I couldn't get a realtor or my national BPO service is really who it is. But I couldn't even find a local realtor to drive out to this. This was in New Mexico. I couldn't get anybody to drive out and give me a freaking value on it because it was so far in the middle of like the desert, nowhere. So that's a big thing, and if you're gonna pay, even consider paying top dollar for something, performing or not, you want to make sure that, hey, I'm going to take this back and it's going to be worth, at least what I paid for it.
So I think that's, again, a solid first piece of advice is, do you want to actually own this thing? What's the type of asset? Where is it at?
So, and let me be clear. I have mobile homes in my portfolio.
Uh-huh.
And do I want to own them? No, I hate them. Do they make a lot of money though? They make a ton of money. Like shockingly. To the point where I'm like, gosh, I would probably go buy some more of those.
But at the same time, even though I know we're not talking about if you would own to live in.
Right.
But those assets, because they make money, you want to own them.
Yeah.
That's what I'm getting at.
Yeah.
But if it's like a piece of property that potentially couldn't make money ever, then don't buy it.
Right.
That's what I'm getting.
Yeah, exactly. Which, leads into the next really important thing, that loan to value. So I make sure that I run, what are the comps on this thing? Mm-hmm. And, if you're out there and you're trying to wholesale or broker notes to people, don't do yourself a disservice and go, oh yeah, this property is actually worth $200,000 when it's worth $150,000. Get a real legitimate, the same thing if you're wholesaling the property itself. You still need to know that there's equity in there. So,
and on that, it's I think any expert real estate investor, when it comes to comps, when it comes to determining the appraisal and all that, you're pretty spot on 85% of the time.
Right.
About 15% of the time, if you're good, you'll learn to ask a friend, ask a trusted advisor, ask a buddy. That's why networking is so important. Is you can be like, hey Kristin, can you look up 123 Main Street? Just tell me what you think of this. I'm thinking about buying it. I'm thinking about flipping it. I have a number in mind. What do you think your number is? And if it's similar, then it's like, okay, cool. You're not necessarily getting their number. You're using it to solidify your number. Because if I say 300 and Kristin comes back with 210, well, we're way off. But if I say 300 and she says 510, well, that's equally, it's not bad.
That's
but it's
really good advice. And you know where you really see this is when you're a hard money lender, right? Or a private money lender, and you're lending to somebody and they're like, no, this thing is worth $500,000 after I fix it up with everything I'm going to do to it. And you go there and you look at it and going, where in the world are you coming up with this number?
To who? Who's it?
Who? Yeah, who? Exactly. Because location is still the number one rule in real estate. Location, 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 right? It's, if you can't, you're not going to be able to pick that house up. I don't care how big it is. You're adding 1,000 square footage feet to it, and you're putting in, the highest amount of finish outs of appliances and all that. If it's still in this rundown neighborhood, you're only going to get, that certain ceiling. And, you see that a lot with people who even have a hard money lender and they're like, well, I'm going to go somewhere else because, it's definitely worth this.
And then as far as loan to value, I think in this respect, you're thinking how big of that spread though, right?
Right. So when I'm looking at my piece of paper, because that's what I'm buying, right? And it says that there's $75,000 left on this loan. Principal's left. I mean, not all the interest you're going to make on it, but just the principal is $75,000, and the property's worth $100,000. I feel good about that. It's kind of that same rule of thumb. Well, it used to be 70% minus repairs. Now it's definitely 75% minus repairs. For us in the note world, you like to see 80% minus repairs because it is an occupied property. You're assuming that it's not, something that's unlivable.
Yeah, and those rules are just general guidelines. You should, again, go back to networking and figure out who you're with or who you're around to know your local market. Because, I made a comment on some random YouTube video about a month or two ago because somebody was like, 75% match repairs, blah, 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 blah. And I was like, no, it's still a pretty good place to start.
Right.
You know, if you're bashing that, then, you know.
What, were they saying that was too much?
No, he was just saying that you need to learn your business more. And I was like, I agree with that sentiment too, but it's this business.
It used to be, you know, a decade ago. Decade ago, a decade ago, we were picking stuff up all the time. 65%.
Yeah.
Minus repairs, and then it was like crept up 70, and then 75.
The 65 is what you would sell to the flippers,
right?
So for as a wholesaler, you had to buy lower than 65.
Right.
Anyway.
No, I know. I mean, and as a wholesaler, the same thing goes with this, but it's less important. You know, so I like to see at least 20% equity, a minimum of 20% equity in that note. So between what's left on that note and what the value of the asset is.
So
the collateral is.
So when you're saying is like, okay, so if the full note is 100% and the unpaid balance is 80,000, there's 20% equity. Is that what you're talking about?
Yeah, basically. So if that collateral, right, that single family house, that whatever is worth 100,000, I want to see that unpaid principal balance is maxed at 80.
Because why not more than that?
Well, the rule of thumb, it costs about 10% to sell a house. And all of, you know, the flippers out there, you know, newbie wholesalers, they don't think that. They put that number at 100,000, right? But in reality, you're going to pay 3% to a listing agent, 3% to the buyer's agent, 2% in escrow fees. I mean, you're at 8% right there. If you have anything that needs to be repaired, I always say assume 10% to sell a house. So that brings you right down to 90. If there's any major repairs in that, there's 10% really there to be able to play with.
Right. Yeah, I always say when it comes to flipping it, like, yeah, you're trying to do the whole 75% managed repairs to make 10 to 15% on the deal.
Exactly. And people don't see it like that. They're like, I'm going to make all of it. I'm like, no, you're not.
You do that.
Yeah, I'm like, you got a lot of costs, a lot of fees in doing that. So yeah, it's when I look at that, that's why 80% is kind of that threshold. I've expected, my, institutional buyers that buy from me to get a little tighter on that number, to go down to 75, but they haven't yet. So I'm staying at 80.
So if your target is 80, what's the fluctuation, or not fluctuation is not the right word. What's the degrees of like lower or above that? Like if it's 60%,
okay, so right. So can I still buy it if it's like 85 or 90% of unpaid principal, like of that loan to value? Yes, I can. But what I do is I take my offer and I subtract 1 percentage point for every percentage point that it's above 80.
And what if it's below 80?
That doesn't matter, because really probably, I mean, my loan servicer has like a 1.86% default rate. Mm-hmm. So 98% of the time, I'm never going to get that house back. So it doesn't matter if it's at 65%. I just need to know that it doesn't go above 80.
But what I'm asking though is like, so is 80 the sweet spot, or is 80 the cutoff? Or is
80 is the cutoff.
Okay, so 50% is
I mean,
great.
I buy notes
so
all
is
the
it
time.
Better if it's
God, yeah, but you don't get a better price. I mean, it's kind of hard to get a better price.
It's just a more established, less likely
and less risky. It's a less risky deal because if you've got something that's at 45% loan to value, okay, even if it goes bad, you're probably going to actually make money if it goes bad. Now, do I like to do that anyways? No, because then I have to do a bunch of work.
Right.
And that just irritates me.
Right.
And pisses me off. I much prefer to just buy these notes, park them in my portfolio, and let them make money.
So what about the next one, which is interest rates?
Interest rates are very important. And I love these investors who are like, well, he seemed like a nice guy and he put a lot down, so I gave him a 5% interest rate. No. I'm going to go down. I'm looking for 9 to 10% face, because I'm going to buy at about a 10.5 or 11% yield. Mm-hmm. So I'm going to discount that note off of there to get to 10.5 or 11%. Now, people are like, well, what if I just sold all these at 10.5? Could you give me faith? No, because I've got to make some money in there, right? Also, right now, because interest rates are so low, it's an unqualified mortgage to be selling above 10% anyways right now. So, I don't really want to see that.
So, but from a buying standpoint, what makes a good note to invest in, like, if the interest rate is high, if it's low?
Oh, obviously, the higher the interest rate on that piece of paper, the more money the higher the percentage that your money is making for you. I mean, if you go and invest in something that's 5% return, obviously, if you go and invest in something that's a 10% return, that's double your profits back. And so you're really going to be looking for that.
But even I was thinking in terms of if I pick it up at 10 or 11 and I know there's an investor out there that would pay 8.
They're looking for 6 to 8 right now.
Right. Yeah. So if I'm able to pick up
6 is good.
Yeah. If I'm picking up a note for 10 or 11% on the interest rate, and then I know someone who would
pay
gladly 6%,
6, 7, 8%. Yeah.
I can basically do a wrap. Well, it's not called a wrap, but it's like you keep 5%.
You can. That gets a little trickier.
Okay.
There's a lot that goes into setting up a deal like
All
that.
I'm just saying is
I would love to tell people.
The better.
Yeah, the higher the interest rate, the better. Typically, I don't buy partials. I don't sell partials. I will do kind of I call it crowdfunding a note. So I'll bring in different investors, and they'll get like a preferred 7 or 8% return. And then I will take the percentage points on top of that. I'm assuming that's what you're talking about. But mathematically, it's a difficult thing to put together.
Right.
So, yeah, I mean, you need softwares and stuff like that. It's not. I'm not going to tell you that that's an easy thing to put together.
But at the end of the day, it's like I think this is the easiest one to wrap your head around. Is you just need you want a higher interest rate.
Absolutely. And if people are like, oh, well, why would I ever pay 10% interest? Like if you're out there owner financing, hey, that's not forever. This is going to build up your credit because you're going to make all your payments on time, and then you can go refinance whenever you like.
But that's a whole different conversation.
It's a whole different, exactly. Yeah. So if you're just doing something that you're going to invest in, you're going to be looking for that 9 to 10%, face on there. Have I had notes that I've bought for my own portfolio like 8.5%? Yeah, I mean, that's a good return as well. But when I'm seeing stuff that's like 4 and 5%, I usually apologize up front. I'm like, you're not going to like my offer, because it's going to be down at like 60% of unpaid principal balance.
So it's not a no. It's just, so if it does have a low interest rate, you're still willing to make an offer and you're still willing to purchase it as long as it's like severely discounted.
Yeah, but I mean, it's just like if something was at 100% loan to value, I will take off 20%. Like, okay, I was going to offer him 90. Well, no, now I'll offer you 70%. That's fine. Again, that's just because of where the loan to value came at. Yeah, and the same thing goes for this. So it's not like a hard set rule, but I'm looking for that 80% loan to value. I'm looking for that 9 to 10% interest rate to get the best possible deal.
Right. Next up.
Seasoning.
And I know I can't. I was going to make some stupid.
You would a joke about seasoning?
I'm talking about Thanksgiving.
Note humor?
Seasoning.
Oh, wow.
Holidays.
Hashtag dad joke, and you're not even a dad.
I was going down and I said, eject, abort, don't do it.
So seasoning is how long that note has been going.
Right.
Everybody wants, hey, I'm starting this big thing, and will you buy at the table? No, I won't buy at the table because I believe, I try very hard to stay off a high horse, and because I always get, I'm the big bad real estate investor. And how the hell do you sleep? I get asked that question occasionally, and I'm like, on a bed made of money. It's wonderful. It's absolutely wonderful, and you should come do it.
That's awesome. I love that. Coming from a white Anglo-Saxon upper class female, how do you sleep? I sleep on a bed of money, motherfucker.
Yeah, seriously.
You even got a look from Sekou.
I know. He's like, did she really say that? Yeah.
She's like, I want a bed of money.
Yeah, you come at me like that, I'm gonna tell you. But I try to stay off of the morality high horse and be like, oh, I'm so perfect in everything I do. It is what it is. But I believe that buying notes at the table is what started contributing to the mortgage
What do you mean
meltdown in
by buying
08.
notes at the table? What does
So that means that there's an owner finance investor,
Mm-hmm.
and he knows.
So you mean like
He
the
knows that
title-
I'm right at the title company. Basically, I'm
closing
going to
table.
fund that purchase. So he gets paid off and he gets to walk away just putting that person in there. And I think that contributed a lot to 2008 mortgage crisis
Mm-hmm.
because there were so many mortgage brokers out there. Yeah, they're setting up these deals, but they're out. You know, they have no risk
Right.
past putting
Well,
this all together.
Their motivation is their incentive is to just write as many deals as possible.
And knowing that they're going to get their whole profit because
Yeah.
I'm stepping in and I'm writing it. No.
So from an investor standpoint, the reason you need seasoning is you want to make sure this is a real deal.
I want to make sure that they didn't just put somebody in with a pulse. And I actually looked into doing this, setting up kind of a fund, you know, where I just had all of these pools of cash and doing that. But with the first group of investors that I selected to guinea pig with that, first one out the gate, they put somebody in there with a pulse. And and they had problems with this woman for a year and a half.
So how much seasoning do you think you need?
I really need 6 months.
6 months.
I want to see 6 on-time payments. Have I done it with less? Yes. 4, 5, yeah, sure. I'm going to look at it. I really want to see 6. 12 is better. You know, I've got a lot of people who buy from me. They're not going to touch something. You know, so if I take it down and buy that, I got to hold it for another 6 months so that I can get a better deal. And knowing that I'm going to have money out there for an extra amount of time, I'm not going to give you the top deal.
So I have an analogy for you, and I haven't workshopped this, so it might fall flat, just like my seasoning joke. Wait, we're still on seasoning, so this is
Yeah.
It's not a joke. All right. So seasoning, if you think of it in terms of a steak, you want it rare to medium rare, versus just freshly killed.
Yes, mooing. Yeah,
you don't want to moo to
right.
You want, you know, because it's like.
Oh my God, was that awesome?
Yeah, you know, a little. Anyway, good, Country for Old Men, where they. So you want at least like rare to medium rare.
Yeah.
You know, you don't want it still.
No,
you don't want it at the butcher.
And you also don't want it super well done either.
Yeah.
I mean, somebody was on, you know, Facebook this weekend, and I'm looking at it. I'm like, God, this actually sounds like a pretty good note. You know, I'm like, oh, I'm totally into this. I'm about ready to DM the chick who's selling this thing, and then she gets it. She goes, yeah, it's amortized over 30 years, and it has 2 years left to pay on it. And I'm like, 2 years? And I'm like, no, good God, no, because that's primarily all principal. There's no interest. There's zero profit in that.
Right.
It's not zero, but it's basically zero at that point.
You're basically parking money for no reason.
Yeah. It's like I'm giving you all this money, and then it's like a 0% interest rate. Yeah. Like, hey, let's divide that into 24 payments and pay it back to me. No, I know. I mean, it's freaking awful. So I was, you know, yeah, if you got a 30-year loan, do I like it even when it's 10 years old? Mm-hmm. Hell yes. Love it. 15 years. Great. You get down to 5 years. I mean, you pretty much need to know that you're going to be holding on to that thing or selling it for basically nothing.
So speaking of 5 years, that goes to the next one, which is payment history.
Payment history needs to be good. And I love getting on all these like note paper trading sites. Mm-hmm. And they say that a performing mortgage is anything that's like 120 days late or less. Bullshit. I declare bullshit on that. Performing. And I've seen it now on half a dozen sites.
120
I went out
or less.
120 or less, like 120 days late. And I'm like, that's not called performing. For me, when I'm buying a performing note, they're current.
Yeah.
And I go back and I look at payment histories, which I couldn't understand. Like in the last week, you know, I've got all these notes for sale, and you know, I'm talking to a bunch of investors, and they're like, well, what's the payment history like? And I'm like, all of them are, you know, performing really well. Well, what does that mean? And I'm like, why are people asking these questions? Mm-hmm. You know, and then I got up to, you know, then I get online and I'm like, why is it that performing would ever be considered 90 or 120 days late? But I guess they're still eking in payments. So for me, a performer, it's current. It's due for the payment that's coming up. It's paid basically on the same day every month. Right? Because typically, okay, if they're going to pay between the 1st and the 5th.
Well, that makes no sense, though, as far as anything less than 120 days. Because if that was considered performing, why is it on the quarterly reports from the banks? They
That they're 90-day late.
They have the 90 days and all that.
But and you get that also on the pre-foreclosure list.
Yeah.
60, 90, 120 day late. And I'm like, how could we consider that performing? So again,
it's just people who
for
know
me, I
the
know.
real estate game. They're so smart.
Well, it's funny. I'm thinking that this is like advertisement for like what they sell.
Maybe.
I don't know. For me, performing means
That
current
being said,
and that
if
it
you wanna
pays
learn how
on
to
time all the
invest
time.
in Bitcoin.
That's not me.
That's not me either.
I have no idea what that is.
I'm just starting to see a lot of Bitcoin people come out and about.
Well, that's because last week Bitcoin was up to $20,000 for actual the main one, but it then dropped down to 16,000. So it fluctuates
It's not
really
a good
crazy.
investment because it fluctuates. It's good for day traders, but it's not good investment because it
It's
has
not good
too
for
much.
all day traders.
It fluctuates too much.
Depends on the one.
I don't pay attention to it. I'm talking about ass, but
Yeah.
I'm just saying.
Ethereum, Litecoin. I'm an Ethereum fan, but I know. Don't get me started. Skip.
History,
we don't need it. We're not talking
history,
about
loan
this.
Servicer.
Yeah, no payment when you're looking at, and that's the other thing.
Payments.
On-time payments. Loan servicer. If you are not, anybody out there, if you're a note investor, if you're doing owner finance loans, any of that, make sure and service your note with a third-party licensed note servicer. I have been taken advantage of in the past. I had somebody completely fabricate a payment history. Found out, I was given fake copies of fake money orders, or possibly, the money orders, they took photos of it and then redeposited them right away.
So much work for fraud.
I know.
I don't know.
That gentleman's in jail right now, not because of me. When I discovered the fraud and realized what had happened, I found out he was being prosecuted already.
So this thing is like, when you're in the real estate business, whether you're doing any strategy out there whatsoever, you can be cheap to make a couple extra dollars in the short term.
This is the crazy thing.
But
I get that.
If you want to have a life, or if you want to have a career in this business, or if you want to do more than a deal or 2 deals, you need to use services out there like an RLMO, like third-party loan service providers, like proper
an attorney.
attorneys. Yeah.
Here's the crazy thing. When you're originating these notes and you're selling all these deals to owner finance, the borrower pays for it. If you get this set up at the time of closing, the borrower pays for 100% of it.
Yeah.
You just include it with their payment. You
It's just
include
so
an
much-
extra $30 a month, and at closing, you say, okay, you need to pay the setup fee for your loan servicing.
But Kristin, I could keep that $1,000. That could go to me.
Like they could charge the borrower
I'm
that?
just saying.
Yeah.
I'm just saying it's so
the crazy.
little,
I know.
It's such a little amount of money to completely potentially destroy your business.
If I have to, well, yeah. So, and when I package this stuff up and sell to institutions, I have to make sure that everything looks the same. I have the same BPO. I have the same. Mortgage payment history or something that looks professional that's from a third-party loan servicer. So if I need to, I pay my loan servicer to just put whatever garbage they have that they gave me. Because sometimes I get copies of checks. I get copies of money orders, and then I ask for bank statements showing, where those link up. Whereas if you just start with a third-party licensed note servicer, it goes right. It's just done for you. So always start at the beginning of a loan. But if you're trying to do that now, the chances are most people are doing that wrong.
Right.
Even me, and I know all the rules, but, when I was servicing my own loans, this was like a decade ago, were there times where I would miss maybe a mortgage statement during the month? Yeah, because I'm doing it all myself manually. And if you don't send all of that stuff out every month, okay, well, you're not in compliance.
Yeah, and in 2020 with how everything's automated, that just seems insane.
And it's cheap. It's so cheap to have somebody service your own mortgages. and your borrower's paying for it. You know, if you've got a rental property, a lot of people use a management company and they're paying 10%. You know, there's a 10% cost associated with that for a property management company. But yet you're going to service your own note?
Right.
You know, it just doesn't make sense to me. So yeah, that's a very important thing, is having a note servicer makes that note so much more profitable.
So, but in terms of what makes a note good is when you're looking at a note for acquisition, is it serviced by the person, or does it have a third party? If it's serviced by the person, it's not necessarily a no-go, but it's a really do some heavy due diligence.
Oh, I'm going to look at that thing a lot more closely.
Or you could just say, look, time and effort to do that, I could have already bought 5 more that have loan servicers on it.
Yeah, I mean, I still buy them because, you know, beggars can't be choosers. But at the same time, yeah, I mean, it's going to probably take a couple points off the offer.
Yeah.
It has to. I just can't, I can't take a risk, you know, and I keep hoping people get smart and just hire a licensed note servicer.
Whew.
I have had.
Hoping people are gonna get smart.
It's not just that. It's the ones that don't use the licensed note servicer. Those houses are usually torn to shit.
Right.
It's inevitably that borrower is not really well qualified. There's so many things that end up being more wrong with that piece of paper.
Moving on to the last.
Borrower strength. Borrower strength. I think there's one below that too.
Is there?
Yeah, I think there's a 7. So when you're looking at borrower strength, a lot of people are like, well, you know, we don't check credit. You know, we never look at credit for this. And I'm like, all right. Credit is not, you know, do you need to have a 720 to do an owner fight? No, you don't. However, if you've got somebody that comes to you and they've got sub 500, you need to probably pass on that person.
Mm-hmm.
Or sub 400. I've had notes brought to me and that person had like a 388 credit score. I didn't even know it went that low.
But what if they came to the table with a 40% down payment?
You know what? If they've got a 40% down payment, their credit's usually better than a sub 400.
But I'm talking about hypotheticals.
Hypothetically, you take that borrower. If they're putting 40% down and you've got sizable equity in that property, I mean, you're not going to care about that credit.
But even at 20%, that's a little too tight?
No, I would still do it at 80% loan to value.
What about 10%?
No. No, I mean, I just, you know, if I'm looking at a sub 1, I'm not going to be able to get rid of it. I will not be able to sell that note. I've got most of my institutional buyers, no sub 550. There's another group that's no sub 600, and some who have now moved to no sub 650.
But if there's, but above like a 650, in that more, they could probably get a loan with a regular bank?
You know, surprisingly, they could, but they don't. And I don't know why. I have a note right now.
It's the system, man. You can't trust the system.
It's my oldest running note right now. It's from 2009. The guy has, I think he's sitting at 40% loan to value, and he has a 9.9% interest rate, and he's got a 776 credit score right now. 776.
So it's just ignorance. He doesn't know that he could refi out?
I have sent him letters
to say, hey, you should refi out?
I tried a couple years ago. I'm like, do you want to refinance?
With you or with somebody else?
Not with me. He's paying me 9.9.
Oh. You're just like, hey,
no,
here's an option.
No.
I'll take my cash.
No, he can, you know, he can go borrow money from somebody who doesn't sleep on a bed full of money.
I'm sure they still do.
Right.
I think they don't sleep on the bed of money. They sleep on a bed of like gold and marble and platinum and
right.
And whatever that element that's in cell phones that sells for like $1 billion per like milligram or whatever.
Yeah.
That's their beds.
So again, looking at that credit score, when I'm looking at it, I take in a couple things. How old is this note? How are they paying well? Mm-hmm. You know, if they've been paying the same day on time for the last 4 years, do I really care that they've got a 500 credit score? No.
So it's almost like a hard money loan in a way. If it's asset based, but their asset that they're coming with is their pile of money
right.
for the down payment.
Right.
So,
but you know what? A lot of times too, like that loan is less than a year old. and I'm looking at how much, then I'm going to really look at how much they put down. And if it's less than 10%, because 10% should be that kind of minimum that they go for. And if it's less than 10%, then I'm kind of like,
So, terms.
Does term matter? No.
Term or terms?
Term.
Like, what do you mean by term?
What is it amortized over?
Okay, because I was thinking terms in terms of
negotiation tactics.
Yeah, like it's the whole. Not to tangent too much, but it's like, would you buy this for $1 million? Like, well, what are the terms? Do I have 1 million years to pay it off?
Oh, that's true.
You know.
Yeah.
Is that what you're referring to?
No.
Okay.
So I'm talking about
what
the
term.
Right.
Term
I get asked a lot. Okay, amortization.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, is it amortized? The standards are 10, 15, 20, and 30.
Right.
I have one group of investors that I buy from regularly, and they like a 22-year loan. I don't know why, but that's just what they do. Is that a problem? No. Once you get above 30, though, because 30 is that kind of that maximum that my institutional buyers like to see, I know that it's going to be harder for me to get rid of it. Do I personally like a 35 or a 40-year loan? Freaking love them, because for the first 10, 15, 20 years, very little principal's paid down.
So,
and in a 5-year, that first 5 years, nothing is paid off.
So what I'm hearing is, does term matter? And the answer is it depends. It depends who your buyer's pool is.
Yeah, it depends on, am I going to keep that for a while?
And personal preference. Like,
Yeah.
Are you someone who prefers a 10-year, a 15-year, a 20-year, a 30-year, a 35-year, a 100-year? Or are you a flipper, or are you wholesaling your notes?
Right.
And if that case, it goes back to, what is your buyer pool?
Right. So when I learned how awesome a 35 or a 40-year note is, a couple of years ago, I had this note, and I took it down because I love the guys, right? And all of my banks passed on it, like every single one. And I'm like, oh, crap, right? Because I had it in probably 10 or 12, note tape offerings to my guys. Everybody kicked it out because of this 35-year amortization. And I was like, shit. I'm like, who am I going to sell this thing to, right? And I'm kind of freaking out. I'm, because I had like $150,000 tied up. And I'm like, and that, that puts a little handcuffs on me. I can't buy as much if I've got that tied up in a note and it's sitting there and I can't move it fast enough.
So what I'm hearing in all of this, and it goes back to it being 2020 and having a strong CRM and knowing who your network is. Like, if I know Kristin buys at XYZ in location ABC and she prefers a 22-year note, well, I need to document that, because there might be another guy over here named Steven, and maybe he likes 30 years, and maybe he likes this, and maybe he's like that. And then if I'm a flipper, or maybe if I'm not a flipper, maybe I'm a buy and holder, but I come across an opportunity that I can't take down, well, I'm not going to give that away or pass it up. There's still an opportunity to make money. That's the whole reason wholesaling even became a thing for single family houses. Is I'm a flipper. Well, this opportunity came to me. Well, I don't want to just pass on it. I want to make money on it. So, hey, my buddy Bill over there, he'll buy it. Hey, here, take this. Kick me back something. So my point to that whole randomness is just take notes on who your network is.
Oh, I mean, that's, I've got Excel spreadsheets and I have notes on everybody. That way I go, all right, who are my buyers? And I have it all tabbed out and organized as well. So I'm like, okay, well, I've got these.
You put that like in a Podio or something.
I've got a Podio, really?
Podio is a CRM software.
Oh, okay. My rudimentary method has always worked for me.
Whatever works for you, works for you.
So, and I'll go, all right, well, okay, so who's buying second liens right now? And I'll go to my sheet and I just highlight everybody's email address, send it in and go, hey, guys, I got these second liens. Anybody want them? You want to take a look at them?
Yeah.
So that's, again, it's knowing who to sell the stuff to, what you can pay for it. But now I ended up holding that one 35-year note for like 8 months. I made over $9,000 on that in 8 months, just holding that stupid thing, and yeah, it was cash out, but I got all of my capital back plus $9,000.
Yeah.
And that was selling par to par, buying at par, selling at par. So that was like not even the amount that I had like for, my little spread there.
So does term matter? From
So
what I'm hearing, the answer is it depends, and yes, and then sometimes no.
right, and usually no, because I'll buy it now because I know how to sell it.
Yeah.
When I sold it, it was basically at the end, and I'm like, this thing is freaking awesome. I've already made this much money on it, and I'm going to sell and get this profit. I need to point out to everybody else, hey, yeah, this is basically all interest.
Right.
You're not losing any principal for a while. And as soon as I presented it like that, they were like, yeah, sold, I'll buy it.
Well, cool.
So again, that's kind of what does term matter? Not really, but to make it easy to sell to a wide pool of buyers, right? I'm one person. I could get hit by a bus next week and you got to go find a new buyer. You don't want to go, oh yeah, 35, 40 years, let's make all of those 35. Don't do that, to the 10, 15, 20, or 30 year loan.
So 1 through 7, the list that we had, just to recap, what makes a good loan? You've got the type of asset, the location, the LTV, the interest rate, the seasoning, the payment history, loan servicer, borrower strength, what's the down payment, and then does the term matter?
Not really.
So if we missed anything, let us know. If you object to anything or contradict, let us know. If you like this video, hate this video, let us know.
If you object to anything, shut the hell up.
Yeah, right. Follow me on Instagram, Ryan S. Harper. And then you got
Kristin Gerst on Instagram.
Yeah, follow her.
Yeah.
Kristin Gerst on Instagram. Also, we've got the Passing Notes group. So if you want to learn more about note investing, check out passingNotesGroup.com, where multiple times a week, Kristin comes up here and does a more presentation teaching style on all things note investings and whatever.
Yeah.
And then directly after that, there's a Q&A with everybody in the group. We also have quarterly masterminds, access to Kristin, and a 72-hour head start on all of her assets that come through her way.
Which there are tons of those starting to pop up.
There's going to be a tidal wave probably.
There's a tidal wave coming, but I've already had,
starting to come?
Yeah, last week alone, I think I had 6 tapes. They weren't all good. Like some of them I didn't even send out.
But 3 months straight, there was like no tapes.
There were no tapes, and now we've at least got tapes. Today's like lesson for the Passing Notes students is good. It's interesting.
Awesome.
It's about HOA super liens.
Oof, I hate HOAs.
Yeah, who doesn't?
Anyway. Well, thanks for being here, everybody, and we'll see you next time. If you like this video, share it, like it, subscribe to it, hit the bell, all those things, and we will see you later.